Wow, that was his superhero origin.
Shooting himself.
That's kind of amazing.
He shot himself into powers. Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is Quackcast 369. This is what? Does that make the third time we've gotten up to number 69? I don't know. I'm no good at math. So yeah, the sixth.
I'd imagine it'd be the fourth.
Yeah, it would be. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. The fourth time we have gotten to that number. Okay. So, on this Quackcast, we have the magnificent Tanserine. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello. And the magnanimous Bainserine. Hello, Baines.
Hello.
Okay, so there we are. We're all, and Ozone Ocean here, of course. No Pit Face because she is in Ireland at the moment. She is
Indeed.
Yeah.
She's in a lighthouse, all isolated from society and everything.
As she should be.
We're not saying it was court mandated, but
you draw your own conclusions.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about a news post that Baines had created. It's called Points of View, Propaganda and Marketing. And then we may talk about the use of customs and folklore in comics, which was Tance's news post from yesterday. So we'll see what we get into. But first, we've got to get into the feature. The featured comic was one that I featured. So here I am talking about The Last Sheriff. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my comic for the week was The Last Sheriff. This is a comic about the last sheriff, the very last one, in a world where more are surely needed. The world is a violent, lawless place. The strong prey on the weak, and the weak die. In this futuristic version of the Old West, men ride steel steeds and attack with powerful energy weapons. The battles are bloody and impressive. The art is impressively pro-comic level. Full digital color, lots of gradients and light effects. The story is sci-fi fantasy with hardcore action. Lots of set-piece battles, people being killed and murdered and all sorts of things. Lots of violence. You'll like the action. It's really well done. Very mainstream looking work, this one. Not only in the art style, but the story is quite a mainstream sort of story as well. It's quite well done work. A very polished sort of a piece. The team that do it, Chris Jenkins doing the writing, and Chris Imber doing the illustration, I believe. Although there are three names mentioned: Jenkins, King, and Imber. Not sure what King does. Could do the penciling. I don't know. Together, they are all called Reckless Hero. That's their group name, studio. Reckless Hero. Rated E, but probably should be rated M because it's quite violent. Very much an M-rated comic, so probably misrated there. So be prepared for lots of violence and shooting and all that kind of stuff. It's the Old West as envisioned by people like probably Sergio Leone, Sam Peckinpah, and latterly people like Quentin Tarantino. Those sort of people, that sort of version of the Old West. You'll probably enjoy it. And Rodriguez, there's another fellow. Exciting work, very mainstream, entertaining, and not too many pages, so you should be able to get through it quite easily. Okay, so The Last Sheriff, rated, I'm rating it M. Enjoy. And that was the feature, The Last Sheriff. Yeehaw. Okay, so... now we're going to have our featured music by Gun Wallace, and the music this week was Cognito, I think. It is. Cognito.
Oh, okay.
Very clever. Okay, so this is a great little comic. The music it's a slide into some 70s retro classic disco with a modern twist. You'll feel like you're wearing shiny white polyester stretch flares with high white leather platform shoes. Then rock it back into the present with a cool techno dance feel of synthesized beats. Get onto the dance floor and strut your funky stuff. Play that funky music, white boy. Okay, take it away, Gumwallace. Our music. Thank you so much for that, Gumwallace. Cognito. I always get confused by that name. Okay. The Quackcast.
Cognito.
Yeah.
It's fun to read that. No, Tia, I can't remember the title already. You said it was a disco song, so.
Yeah, put it to the music of disco that you know, Badens.
That's the only one I know.
Damn it. No, I can't do that off the top of my head either. I'm terrible. So propaganda and marketing points of view. Why did you choose a buffalo for that image? Or what is it? What is that creature?
I believe it's a bull.
It's a bull. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. It looked like some kind of bovine monster.
Bovine monster, exactly. It's a bovine monster, because a lot of propaganda thing, and it being often they're shoveling some bovine monstrosities, if you will.
Well, I was thinking of this whole topic from the point of view in comics. You're saying points of view and you're talking about like the real world points of view, but in comics we're using it as a way of projecting our points of view at the reader often. Not all of us. A lot of comics don't, but a lot of comics do. Really, really popular humor comics. We project a particular point of view and we shove that at the reader. Whether it's liberal or...
I don't think that anyone can 100% avoid that. If you are the creator of something, at least some part, some bits, some flavor, some element of what you believe will seep into what you're making, even if you are actively trying not to. I don't think it can be absolutely avoided.
Well, a lot of us actually try and deliberately do it. A lot of humor comics, especially, a lot of them we've featured, say, what is it, Jesus 2016? That was a really popular comic about how Jesus was running for president. And it's a very, specific point of view, and it's hilarious.
That guy has no point of view specifically. I'm just kidding. Obviously, definitely does.
Which Jesus? Republican Jesus? Or someone else? Okay.
He's a Republican, but he doesn't want to be Republican, but they want him to be the Republican Jesus. Yeah, it's hilarious. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
It's very subversive.
I agree with Chance that it's always with you and Chance that it's always there and it's unavoidable, almost always there and
Yeah.
pretty much unavoidable. It can be sort of an anvil, like anvilicious, or it can be a way more subtle kind of thing where a show or book or series will have this point of view, but you might not necessarily see it up front. Sometimes you do, but sometimes it's kind of very much it's buried. It's there, but it's a lot more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if in Pinky TA, if there is some kind of political point of view, it's more. I would say, I don't know if anyone else would say it after reading Pinky TA, but I would say it's very subtle. If I'm putting any kind of political point of view, it's not really obvious.
Your worldview must be there, but yeah, I don't get the sense that I'm having a message like hammered over my head with that comic at all.
Yeah,
not
which is good.
No, yes, it's good. The no wasn't that.
Yeah. Not a hammer.
But I do think that there is like a bit of a slant. Like, for example, considering the points of view that the characters in PKTA are representing, like you have Sissy. Sissy is very much an authoritarian, utilitarian sort of representative, and in Pinky, not so much. So you could say that you present these different points of view, and the audience has a chance to compare them. Of course, you confuse that a little bit because Pinky is self-centered and she isn't like a straight self, but does make certain choices that Sissy wouldn't make. So there's that.
Yeah, it's. I like to think that it's subtle. It's I've made Pinky as I've tried to make her as a more real character, in that, yeah, if she espouses a view of being, oh yes, we must do it for the people, or war is bad or whatever, that she's full of contradictions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And which I think is a more real trait for a human to be. You have these virtuous kind of characters and whatever, or characters that are very one note, and I like my characters to say one thing and then just completely do the opposite.
That's great. Very human.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't mind doing a comic that is espousing a point of view, or like using it as a propaganda thing. I wouldn't mind doing that. It's just that my temperament really doesn't lend itself to that. I don't think it's a bad thing to do that. How about you guys?
Baines first.
Okay. Well, I think it's. I don't know if I'm taking it the exact way you mean it, but my first thought would be that it is a bad thing, only because, not that it's bad to have a point of view or a worldview, but that it just makes for, like, propagandizing is like preaching to people.
Yeah.
And it makes for worse stories. It makes for way less effective stories, and it's off-putting.
Well, there are some like really successful comics that do it. I mean, Doonesbury is known for being I don't know if it's still going, but it was going for like decades and decades, and it's always had this left-leaning point of view, and these very these characters who are very much specific kind of portraits of different kind of points of view, and representing different kinds of way of thinking, and that was very popular. A comic cartoon like Family Guy has a very specific political point of view represented by that bloody dog character.
Yes, and it's in a very didactic way, kind of thing. Yeah,
That's incredibly popular.
I haven't read Doonesbury, so I don't know. I would say Family Guy, from what I've watched, is way more in your face because of Brian. Like it's kind of directly preaching at you.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that, no matter what the message is.
But a lot of people are, though, so it does work.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, totally.
I think the people that I think that it would be popular when you want to hear something that you already ascribe to, in the sense that people that would watch Family Guy or what's the other one, South Park, I think, they would, like, the people that would watch it already ascribe to the stuff, the content of the particular propaganda. Like, I don't think that people of the opposing view would easily be fans and follow the particular cartoon. Of course, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's like a certain flavor, but maybe when you have a particular, mental, like you are in a specific headspace, you want to see it as not so much as the thing is preaching to you, but that your voice is amplified and put out there in comic form. And I think that's why they are popular more than anything else.
What about The Simpsons, which has been...
just thinking of The Simpsons, yeah.
That's had like massive, that's so huge, with everybody, that's massively popular. The creators of that do have a very specific political point of view, but they're more subtle about when they how they project it in that.
When I did watch The Simpsons regularly, I haven't seen it in many years now. I know it's still running, but it was very much in the mold of like Mad Magazine, where it was anti-authority and anti-establishment kind of, and it's kind of this thing of like they're lying to you. Like you can't really believe anything that the so-called powers that be are telling you. I love that. That's doing it right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I liked it before I could articulate that. Like I loved that stuff as a kid. I loved Mad Magazine as a kid, and like without even knowing sort of why, it just feels right. But
I remember, like, I also haven't seen The Simpsons for perhaps even a decade.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a long time since I saw it. But I remember feeling that it was like a social commentary of the human existence for the middle class, more or less. Like Western middle class thing and stuff that would concern the Western middle class. And I liked that. It was, and it did have, like, none of the characters were preachy. They were preachy, but they had enough flaws, each of them, that it didn't feel like a mouthpiece. You would choose whether you liked or you didn't like the particular. Like, for example, I never liked Bart. I hated that little bastard.
Yeah.
I thought that I didn't like it. But that didn't mean, and perhaps because he was so flawed and he had his all this range of misgivings and everything, whatever came as a message through him, you could you had the liberty as an audience to either take it or leave it, in a sense. It wasn't imposed on you as this is the one and only truth and this is what you should believe and root for.
I agree.
Lisa says.
I was just going to say Lisa can be preachy, and I've heard on commentaries and stuff like that, people say that they had the opinion that maybe Lisa was speaking for a lot of the writers, the Simpsons writers.
But Lisa is annoyingly perfect.
I never took her to be like the show is preaching at me. Even when Lisa gets preachy, it never feels like,
Lisa feels that she is the class teacher pet that nobody takes into account because everyone is annoyed with them, in a sense.
It's like you're ruining our good time, Lisa.
Exactly.
Icing our buzz. So, the creator of The Simpsons went on to do Futurama, Matt Groening.
Great show.
And Futurama was way more of, putting forward his point of view about the world than The Simpsons, because he didn't have as many restrictions anymore. Did you guys actually find that? Have you seen Futurama?
No, I haven't.
I love that show, especially the initial run before it was initially canceled. There were 4 seasons, and that was like just an amazing show, like an all-time great to me. And I remember hearing him say in the development of that show, he was like, he wants the future to not be good or bad. Like this futuristic technology is not all benefit and it's not all like evil. It's just like kind of the world is now, it's like.
Mm-hmm.
He was avoiding the Star Trek, everything's perfect, military utopia. He described it. And
avoiding the dystopia also.
Yeah.
I haven't ever had the idea, like watching Star Trek, that you are being told the story from the side of the fascists.
Yes, that's a good point.
Like I remember often as a kid watching this and feeling very uncomfortable. Like, are we the baddies? that was the.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. That's a really clever point of view. There should be like a whole sci-fi made and that really deliberately explores that idea.
Yeah.
And people, they discover, hang on, wait a minute. And not in the stupid way they did in, what was it, that everyone quotes, in those 2 comedy guys. They're dressed up as Waffen SS, and they've got the little skull badges on their hats and saying, "Oh, we're the better, we like the skull" or whatever. That's super obvious, whereas this is more subversive. That's clever. I like it.
I don't know. I mean, that was the main reason I never was a Star Trek fan. Although I wanted it because it had more variety than Star Wars. Battlestar Galactica I never get into. But man, I felt like these guys go to assorted planets with their military power and they enforce what they think is right. Never take into account whatever the indigenous peoples are saying. And are we the baddies?
In Futurama, they subvert that quite a lot. In that, Zap Brannigan is the captain of their space force, and he dresses like a Star Trek guy. He's got like the red tunic, but he wears a little skirt.
Star Trek woman actually. He dresses.
Yeah. He wears a little skirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is that kind of character, and he goes to planets. We come in peace, shoot to kill, sort of thing, and they deliberately subverts all of that.
And the thing is, like, they have supposedly inclusivity in the sense that you have all sorts of races of aliens coexisting in the cockpit, or in the main bridge or whatever it's called, main deck.
But the Earthlings are in charge.
No, it's not the Earthlings. Okay, fine. I don't care who is in charge in the cockpit. The thing is that there is a distinct separation between those that have the spaceships and those that don't have the spaceships. Like, whose opinion counts is not on the race, as in, your DNA stuff or your skin. It's on whether you have the ray gun or not. And that really disturbed me a lot as a kid. And I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And there was nobody to talk to about that because everyone was either a Star Wars fan or everyone just wanted to be Spock and nobody cared about me.
about the social, political dynamics that are going on here. The power dynamics. You're too intellectual.
No, I was the girl that ruined the joke for everyone. So,
but that is a good point of view. So Star Trek is putting forward very strong political points of view, and people don't actually realize it.
mm-hmm.
And that was deliberate. Gene Roddenberry had a deliberate idea. He didn't want to be fascist. His idea was, everybody will be the same and we'll be free and there'll be no sexism. Yeah, there'll be no sexism or racism or anything like that. So it was, on the face of it, was meant to be good. But I suppose if you take it from another direction, it's because it's imposed. Like in communist Russia, they had that kind of thing,
Or it could be like a Pax Romana for space.
But imposed by, the threat of disintegration or whatever. I don't know. You have to be this way, or you're excluded, and you don't get to enjoy the benefits of technology and everything. You're you're left with some Stone Age little planet somewhere.
Or even if you don't want to enjoy the benefits of technology, you still get to. So,
and the whole series is that's how it is. That's like the unspoken. Not that people will be forced to enjoy this, but the unspoken thing about it is that you should want to enjoy the benefits of the Federation, and you'd be insane not to, because this is. Don't you want to enjoy this peace that everyone has? Don't you want to enjoy all the benefits of technology? And you won't if you don't follow the lead and do what the Federation says. But it's not. It's not. They don't say. Yeah, they don't say you will get disintegrated or we will invade and force you to be this way. It's just that. You as a viewer are left with the idea that anyone would be stupid not to be part of the Federation. Yes, so that's how it is.
Basically the Federation point of view, in a sense.
Exactly. Oh. So yeah, that's a good example of a propaganda point of view that's there, and it's not open. You have to be smart like you are to actually see it.
That's like, I definitely didn't quite get that message from Star Trek, although what you're saying makes sense, that it kind of was there. I've also read some novels that various writers have put their own politics into Star Trek. It's kind of, there are a lot of unanswered details in those shows that kind of different writers, like wherever they are in the political spectrum, can do have a very different take on the whole thing.
Well, they did sort of subvert that whole idea in your favorite series of Star Trek, which is Star Trek Voyager. No, it was Deep Space Nine.
Discovery, yes.
Discovery. So Deep Space Nine does subvert that because they have another a third way, which is the Maquis, named after the French Resistance, I think. And
well, not just them, but they have a lot of. I know what you're getting at, but they had a lot of other alien points of view in that show. It wasn't all the singular point of view and the singular priorities. It was all these others. But mainly the Maquis, who were Federation citizens displaced. Yeah, go ahead.
But they're not part of the Federation, and the Federation's angry at them. The Federation sort of provides them with some support, but really they're not. They don't really like the Maquis very much, and they're a thorn in the Federation's side. And you think, well, why don't the Maquis just join with the Federation and be good people, initially? But
yeah, that's true.
They
purposely leave.
Yeah.
And there's one Maquis character who says, like, you hate us for that. Like, we're the worst of the worst to you because we choose to leave, and you don't allow for that. That mentality that anyone would ever want to leave.
So perhaps I'll go on time.
It's the European Union.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is. But perhaps they became a bit self-aware of their whole, point of view we were talking about, and they were actually trying to subvert that a bit when it came to Deep Space Nine. I don't know. Perhaps.
I've read that and sort of kind of can feel, it's subtle, that the Next Generation series, especially in its second half of the series, had a more conservative bent. DS9 was a more left-wing kind of bent to from the creators of the show, the driving main producers behind the show.
Okay.
You can kind of see a bit of that. But you really have to look, in my opinion. I can love both series, and I do, but there's definitely a different approach. Yeah.
I mean, I can be totally subsumed by the conservative military utopia very easily.
I just wouldn't want to have to clean the holodeck after Riker goes in there.
No.
Other than that, I would love to live on that ship. It'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't know. That cube that turns into whiskey sounds very suspicious. Do you remember that scene where which commander is it? I don't remember. He wants to have a tumbler of whiskey, and they show very specifically that he drops a cube, and then something happens with the ray, and it becomes whiskey. No? I don't remember that.
Oh, that sounds kind. I think maybe that's the mix of two. I'm not a Trekkie. I swear, I'm not that much of a. But I think it sounds like two different episodes to me.
Oh, is it? I remember that saying, feeling that. Oh my God, that's a cube. Where has it been? I'm terrible sometimes. That's why
I remember Data, the android, made a drink that there was a little solar flare in it. He sort of makes this special drink, and then he flicks the cup or something, and then you can see this solar flare or this effect in the drink. I don't know if that's the one you mean.
No. It was a very classic whiskey shot.
But you put a cube in a cup and it turns into whiskey? I don't remember.
And that cube then gets transmuted, in a sense, into whiskey.
Oh, okay. No, I don't remember
the first series.
But I don't remember which series it was because I never consistently watched it. It was just Star Trek.
With Spock and all that kind of stuff.
I think it was Picard that was commander, but I'm not sure. I might be wrong.
The cube whiskey. This is the Borg you're thinking of. That was a spaceship, and that never turned into whiskey.
Oh my God! I was a bizarre kid. So there's that also.
I think you were a thoughtful kid.
Very thoughtful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
A show like 24, which I guess has been gone for a long time too. Definitely.
Oh my God!
Conservative.
Yes.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. Ideology. I don't even think about it when I watch that show. I love that show.
Okay.
I love it too. Although, after a while, as a kid, I couldn't do that. But now I can compartmentalize. I can tell myself, yeah, I know it is selling that. I don't buy that, but I like the story, so I will watch it and enjoy it. And 24 is one of these things. And
very exciting show.
Yeah. And the premise is very innovative. Watching in time, 1 hour and one episode and blah, blah, blah. Very good.
When no one goes to the toilet or sleeps.
Yeah.
You can abstain from the bathroom for a day if you are very
good. Especially if you're not drinking any water or anything.
Yeah.
Or eating.
Yeah.
And also, if you are under great stress, there is this fail-safe that your organism has that concentrates makes the urine super concentrated, and you don't need to go.
Right.
I remember.
But then it feels like you are being Amber. So
Oh God.
too much information, but the more you know.
The more you know. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah, there's a lot of shows. West Wing that very much had a political point of view.
Which one? The Good Wife as well.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Very bland in the end. But initially it had this central, it was a commentary on, political machinations and how politics behind the scenes happen and blah, blah, blah. But after a while, I think it lost its momentum.
Yeah, and they become dramas. Handmaid's Tale. I haven't seen the series, but I don't actually want to, because I know the book and it's just too harrowing, so I wouldn't want to. I don't want to.
I have to say I watched one episode by chance when I was in Brighton, and I didn't have any sleep, so I flipped on the television, and that's what it had on. And I like the first scene. The first scene I saw was a rape scene, so that put me off.
But yeah, that show. I haven't seen the show, I say, but the same theme carries through all the iterations that they've done of it, and it's a very it's talking about like the place of women in this science fiction kind of fascist society, but it's very real colour. It's not just like places like Iran, which is obvious, and Saudi Arabia, but in the West as well. We have the same kind of thing that we don't see on the surface, and it could happen. The Handmaid's Tale, that situation could actually happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be somewhere like Iran. That could happen in today's world, in any Western country. It's always just creeping below the surface, and it's also our past was very much like that as well. So, and it's a very it's very harrowing. It's very real, and yeah, it's expressing a particular political point of view, and it's good to have that kind of thing. So I would say, at the beginning, Baines, you were saying you don't like it when a political point of view is, or propaganda or whatever. In this kind of way, I think it's a very valuable thing to do. It's but people should be exposed to that.
In all these examples, they are not actually preaching to you. They just present you with the situation, and you are free to adopt the point of view that they are trying to sell you or not. Like, I think if
I haven't seen that show, but yeah, that's kind of more what I meant. I hope, yeah, like maybe that show doesn't feel preachy. I don't know. I have to see it.
Well, it is a little preachy, I have to say.
It is okay.
From that one episode that I saw, like, it really hammers it in. But because the premise is very specific, like there is this extreme situation where most women are infertile, and only certain women are fertile, and you have very specific and distinct social classification and blah blah blah, and how money gets to exploit certain things, and so on and so forth. You can buy, quote unquote, that this could happen because of the specific situation. So you can choose to focus on what you want from that setting, rather than what necessarily the creator would like you to focus on.
Yeah, you can sort of think about it more as a science fiction story rather than the broader social commentary that it actually is.
Right.
this is
social commentary. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's really obviously has a place in fiction.
Yeah. And I think that the creator, at least, and that is
Margaret
my
Atwood, I believe.
I don't know. Anyway, but the pressure, what struck me is that they wanted more to focus on gender issues, gender and sexuality, and maybe sexual alignment, maybe. And for me, as a viewer, watching this, that had nothing to do with anything. For me, it was far more the social stuff and the social strife and everything going on, more than the gender issue.
Yeah, that might
For
be.
someone else,
Oh yeah, go on.
it's a gender issue. That's
Right. I was just going to say that might be also the form that particular dramatization is taking as well. Like TV series as opposed to the book or the movie version that was done in the 80s. As the book makes it very clear, it's more about the gender stuff. In that this lady is moving, making a career for herself, and she has a husband or whatever. I can't remember the exact details, and then suddenly everything changes, and she no longer has these paths, these career paths, and that's all blocked off to her. But it's not blocked off to these fellows, who just automatically take those positions, and why can't she do these things that she would normally do? And that was you get that contrast between the life before and the new life after the new regime. And from reading that, you immediately think straight to Iran. That's if you've seen Persepolis. Persepolis.
Yeah, I was just you made me think of Persepolis. Yeah, or Persepolis, or whatever it's called.
Very much that kind of thing there.
Right.
And you automatically think, oh, that's just a commentary on Iran, and then you begin to realize, hang on, that's a commentary on this is a broader situation that could happen anywhere. But that's just my reading of it anyway from that particular thing. Yeah, but
that sounds interesting.
It's valuable in that it forces you to think in that kind of perspective that that people who are are sexist or whatever or bigoted. That's not just a point of view. That's actually a dangerous point of view because of what it leads to. Because it actually has led to these kind of situations in these places. It's not just someone, that's old Uncle Ted, he's just a sexist bastard, just a racist or whatever.
Yeah.
But
that reminds me of another movie talking about that sort of message. And I think it's called Mephisto. I think it's called Mephisto. It's about pre-Nazi Germany, and we follow the career path of this thespian guy who wants to make it, to make it into the German scene as an artist, and he is very liberal. He is very much a person that you would call normal, with centrist towards leftist views, let's say. And little by little, as he gets into interaction with assorted people and assorted characters, and it's very well given. And it's also a very artistic film. Like, it has a lot of special angles, and I highly recommend it for people that want to get ideas about presenting stuff in webcomics and stuff, everything.
German expressionism sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. It has, a lot of usage of negative space. It has a lot of weird but well done angles that symbolize how the person feels, like small person, big regime, and vice versa. This sort of thing. So anyway, we follow this guy, and he makes small concessions, little by little, in order to make it big and become very famous in Germany and everything.
Yeah.
And And in parallel, we watch this super Nazi guy. He has been in the Nazi party since 1925 or whatever. And he's a bastard who, complete with the blunt cut and the fringes and the crew cut and then everything, the whole
the Nazi haircut. Yeah, I know.
the nerd Nazi haircut,
not
the cool Nazi nerd haircut. So we follow these two people that start off from completely different points in the range, and the thespian makes small concessions, like this doesn't matter, and this doesn't matter, and this doesn't matter, and it's a little bit bigger every time for what he has to do and what he has to say and how he has to act to please the ever-growing Nazi party that gains more and more power in Germany. And the other guy is slowly starting to see his ideology of what the Nazis were crumble. Like, but why are you doing this? We said that we're going to do that. And why are you doing this? We said we're going to do that. That sort of thing. And the guy, the thespian, okay, spoiler, I don't know, it's an old movie and you can see it coming, but that's not the point. The guy that is the thespian becomes like a super Nazi in the end. And although he still thinks that he is leftist and liberal. And the Nazi guy actually denounces the Nazi party and he gets, I'll say it, he gets found in a ditch at some point because he gets murdered by his friends. So this, I think, it's a very good commentary on how the slippery slope can take you where you never think you would go, and you don't want to admit to yourself that you went there once you have. Very interesting.
Okay.
And that's very strong social commentary, very strong. And
just sort of human commentary, kind of.
Yes.
The way we are, yeah.
That's a more balanced, well, I wouldn't say more balanced, that is balanced. It's attempting a balance. I mean, it's not really, because it's actually, the Nazis in that context are always bad. You're not saying, the Nazis are good on one side, they're bad on one side. The Nazis are a foundation of badness. But you're having balance on either side of the people who are involved in it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is an interesting kind of way of doing it. Yeah, so you can have some kind of creative project where you have the baseline, Nazis in that case, and you have their characters following different paths, in relation to it, which, gives you a very different take on it to something that just says, this is the Nazis, they're bad no matter what. Mm-hmm. Whereas instead of doing that, you're sort of saying, this is how you can become like this and not realize it. This is how good people turn bad. I like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're not just saying bad people are bad. You're saying anybody can be bad.
Nobody is born and, twirls his mustache at 2 years of age saying, I'm going to be a bad person.
Yeah. Right. That's where you get really good political commentary. So Baines, you would say that is not propaganda then because it's more balanced?
Just to hear Tans describe it, it's like you're looking at humans. They're characters who are written, obviously, but it feels like, from what you described, like in that story, you're looking at human beings in certain situations and like how things change and how someone can fall into something or bit by bit compromise what they were and change into something else. And on the other hand, on like how you can fall or be disillusioned and what the consequences of that might be. Like, yeah, that's great stuff. I'm all for that stuff. That doesn't seem to be like didactic, and I hate to see anyone criticize the Nazis. So it doesn't sound like they were doing that.
I would say that it is didactic in the sense that it is a warning tale.
I don't know then, man. It's a good question. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's nuanced. It's nuanced.
Very much. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So we're. I like this. I like the fact that we are in a grey area on a whole propaganda thing. We're no longer saying it's bad. There can be good aspects to it. It just depends, and it's a good thing.
We have, I think, to define first. We didn't do that initially, and that's actually in discourse. It's a mistake. We should define what propaganda is, because if we say that propaganda is rhetoric designed to sell you something that is not correct, that it doesn't reflect something that is ethically sound, let's say, then whenever you have a propaganda film like a Triumph of the Will or whatever, then it's bad. But if you say that propaganda is just projecting forth what you think is right, then you get a whole bigger scope of things that fall into that definition.
Right, that's more having a worldview or a point of view, or even if you're creating something that offers different points of view, and different people would look at different characters or different parts of it, and different people would come out. Oz was saying this, like with different takeaways from it, or they would side with specific characters, or certain things would seem more important. I guess it's the agenda thing when it's not a legitimate point of view. When it's kind of selling you something, or like trying to sell you like an ideology or something. I mean, I can't think of an example of a piece of fiction that necessarily does that offhand.
Sells you an ideology, a piece of
in a disingenuous kind of way or something. Yeah.
My cat is speaking up 1 second.
He's got a point of view. He wants everyone to hear that he's hungry and everyone should feed him no matter what, at all times.
he is now projecting propaganda because he has been fed. and his bowl is actually full right now. And he's a liar and a thief.
So you say, Tan. The cat says something different. I don't know who to believe here. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
I guess what I'm getting to is like, there's a difference between, I'm sorry again, but a difference between seeing something with a point of view that you don't necessarily agree with. I've seen stuff with points of views that I don't necessarily agree with, but there's a difference between that and a disingenuous framing of something.
Can I say one that I do feel that it was very disingenuous, and I got, like, I enjoyed it, but I didn't like that I enjoyed it. That was 300. Oh my
okay.
God.
I haven't seen it.
Oh goodness.
Oh my God. It's like a piece of propaganda about how can I put it? It feels like it is made as an excuse to sell a reason for war or a reason for militarization. I don't remember it very well right now, but as I was watching it, I remember feeling that there was some kind of brass vetting the script for some reason. I don't remember why. I have to say, like, I cannot back it up right now, but if I watch it again, I will be able to. But it kept saying so much how I don't remember, but I remember that it felt very much like I was listening to propaganda for the military in some
Right.
manner. And I did enjoy it. I have to say I enjoyed them. I had fun in the movie, but I couldn't relax and let it sweep me away because I kept getting this feeling like,
Right.
oh my
Yeah.
God, what is he saying? Like that has.
Well, that's
Oh,
the thing. Like, other than that intuition, like, who's to say if any given thing is manufactured? I mean, I guess I lean, like, talking about propaganda, I lean even to the news, the sort of corporate news on one side versus the corporate news on the other side. And it's kind of like they're different and they keep kind of battle with each other, but it's also kind of like, well, you're both kind of serving sinister ends a lot of time, in my opinion, and being disingenuous, and you're propping up a system of anyway. That's a whole thing. I won't go into all that,
yeah.
but I mean, other than like in fiction, like I guess it's difficult, other than using intuition, to know like, is this a legitimate take on things, or like,
I think
do I just disagree, or do I feel wrong about it because
it's
I'm
pretty
being
obvious
BS'd?
in a lot of ways. I mean, yeah, 300 that has a particular, that is a classic Western point, Western East, West versus East point of view, and that was always going to be there. There was the film, if you've ever seen it, so bad in its political propaganda. This was done in the height of the Cold War. It's called The Beast, or The Beast of War. This is a film about.
Heard of it?
What was that?
I said I think I've heard of it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's about a Russian tank crew, and about how bad the Russians are in Afghanistan and how evil they are. And one of the guys is the hero is Stephen Baldwin. He's one of the Russian tank crew, and it's about how he eventually has his his what is it, Saul or St. Paul moment, when he realizes he's actually been the bad guy all along, and he's the side he's fighting for is the wrong side.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's just so one-sided, this film. The Russians are bad, and there's nothing good about them unless they decide to fight for the good Afghanis, who are,
Oh, wow.
who are virtuous and marvelous, and everything they do is just is freedom and all this, and the Russians are oppressing them.
I see.
Fair enough.
Now that you talked about that, I remember watching very recently an Indian film that actually was banned in India for a while. Now it's not. And it's called Padmavati. And that is the story of a semi-historical figure of a woman that set herself on fire to avoid being captured by a Muslim invader. So, and that's her story that we watch throughout the film. The film is very well shot. Personally, it felt like every frame was a painting. It was very, very beautiful. Very Indian culture, the ancient Mahabharata style Indian culture, and very, very nice, everything. But when you see the Muslims in it, they are roguish brutes. I have never seen a portrayal of Muslims in ancient times. Ancient, I mean, like around 1200s, 1300s,
Okay.
around that. So we're talking about not exactly Ottomans, but like Ottoman, a tribe, let's say, of Ottoman
Moguls.
Yeah, in a sense. So they are the most unethical, cheating, brutish, ugly, smelly, crass group that you have ever seen on film. to the point that they are funny.
Right.
The way they are very terrible and very sinister and everything, and they win in the end. But they are terrible.
It's cartoonish, the portrayal.
Yeah. And although, to the film's defense, the poem that they have based the whole thing of does portray the Muslims like that. The reason that it was banned to a point was because the Muslim communities in India felt that they were misrepresented.
I wonder why.
And though I have to say, and this is my personal bias, for different experiences in my life, that I didn't brush me wrongly to see it. I'm not very. I'm initially always very closed towards a very openly Muslim person, and that is my personal misgiving, which I always have in mind. I could see that this was propaganda, and I mentally discarded it, although I was amused by it. But I could see that if I was a Muslim person, I would feel very offended by it. I wouldn't be able to watch the film.
Yeah.
So there's that. 1 second.
Yeah, these things, that's where it comes to be the propaganda aspect that, you're really talking about in that post. When things are not nuanced, they're just saying, this is how it is, and this is how it is. And we're not giving you an alternative or offering you a point of view. We're just telling you what it's like. Yeah, with Tansa's film there about the ancient Indian thing, and the Beast of War, the one that I saw is Russians are bad, and it's good to be an Afghan. It's good to be free. Oh, another one, Braveheart, classic propaganda style. We fight for our freedom, our freedom. That's a ridiculous. That's a solidly modern American point of view it's putting forward. It's nothing about, Scotland, people trying to imagine that it's about Scottish independence, whatever. Scottish people don't really want to be independent. Every time they do a vote, it's always voted down. That's a modern American point of view of history looking back. It's the same thing in the 300. It's a modern American point of view of history, freedom. In history, no one ever fought for freedom. That's total bullshit. That's a modern idea. Because what is it to be? What is it be to have freedom? There's no such thing. You either get this lord or that lord, and the people who are fighting aren't fighting to be free. They're fighting as vassals of this particular lord. They haven't got a choice, All these people fighting for under William Wallace weren't going, yeah, we're going to be free and we can do what we want. They have to fight because they have political alliances and things. They never fought for freedom. No one in history, well, perhaps that's going a bit far, but people rarely ever fought for freedom. They fought for a limited self-determination, but yeah, that idea of people having big speeches and a catch cry about freedom is disingenuous, to say the least. Yeah,
I don't know about that per se, because that self-determination that they had in mind to them was freedom. So maybe not as we define it right now, but to them, for example, the capacity not to be, for example, a serf. That means that you came with the land and you were property. Just that, without anything else, to a serf could be equal tantamount to freedom, because that's the level from the starting point.
I know what you're saying, but what I'm saying is in terms of William Wallace and all that kind of stuff, they were still serfs. There's no change there. They just
but they were serfs under Scottish people and not British people, and that to them could have been enough, because there have been a lot of stories about serfs actually not being interested in not being serfs, but being interested in changing the lord that owns them. Horrible as that sounds. Why? Because that's how they were born and the reality in which they lived. So the range of options that they had in mind, in front of them, wasn't to be absolutely free. It was that, okay, I have been dealt this shitty deal with this bastard lord, but I can change this bastard lord for someone better. So, while still being a serf, for example. Or I can opt being owned not by a bastard lord, but by the king, who is God ordained, so should be better. It's all in the mind and the limits that the mind sets. But whatever these limits are, still is freedom to that person.
Well, yeah, that's a more intellectual sort of way of looking at the idea of freedom, whereas in what we're being sold in movies like, Braveheart and the 300 is just a broad idea, freedom from the tyranny of these Normans, and that's it, and we will be free without them.
I think that also has to do a little bit with the quote unquote relatability that every studio wants to have. Like if they portray it as freedom to be served to some other guy.
That's what I
that might be.
That's what you said too, I think. Yeah.
That was my initial point. That is a modern perspective. That's not what they were fighting for back then, and that was not a catch cry. That was not something that William Wallace made a big speech about. Freedom, and everybody fought for freedom. As you were saying, it was way more nuanced than that broad thing, and that is a modern perspective, and that is a propaganda in a way, because that comes from the whole American Revolution kind of idea. The myth of the creation of the American states, or the American union of states, is freedom from the British Empire.
If I'm not mistaken, and I could be, I think that was the issue in 300. Like everyone was talking about freedom.
Yeah, exactly. That was what I was talking about there as well. It's the same thing.
Like you had freedom in every second sentence, and I remember it much better. Thank you. Because I remember thinking, like, if you wanted to have, Greeks talk about freedom and freedom and freedom, like, why didn't you do a piece on the Greek Revolution of 1821? Because that's where they actually literally talked about freedom all the time. It's like freedom. They even wrote it on their banners, like historically. So do that, because at the time it was just kick the Persians back. That was all there was to it. It wasn't about freedom. It was just, let's not be occupied by these guys. That was the only thing.
Precisely. And the Spartans were a very bad poster boys for the idea of freedom.
Yeah,
they were very, very bad.
Yeah, they were pretty fascist and very much military a military state on one hand, and objectively so. On the other hand, you could say that they had more freedom than, say, the Athenians, in the sense that if you were in the caste of the Omi, well, they were the soldiers, okay, the actual citizens of Sparta, then you were pretty much an equal, and you had an equal vote, and you ended up, like, if you survived and grew up to be, 40, 50, some, 60, I don't think it was 60. Everybody died at 60. But you could get into the Senate that they had. And so you had a self-governed state by the citizens. In a sense, of course, they were very totalitarian, fascist bastards oppressing everyone else in the Peloponnese. So there's that.
And didn't they have their own slave culture?
Yeah, they had
below them?
They were very much very harsh slave owners, and they treated all the other Peloponnesians like dirt. So they were fascist.
Yeah.
It's just if you zoom in, like go inside the fascist state, like if you were a citizen of the fascist state, then you had certain freedoms that nobody else had in Greece.
Yeah. Yes,
so
yes,
that.
Exactly. Which is an interesting perspective. That brings me on to another film. God, we've got to finish the Quackcast soon because we're running over time. But what's that film? It's about bugs. Very famous.
Creepshow.
No. It's a Paul Verhoeven film.
Oh, I was going to mention that too. Starship Troopers. Yes.
Starship Troopers. So
okay.
Starship Troopers takes another perspective on the whole fascist thing, because that's a satire on people living in a fascist community or a fascist world. The whole world is fascist, and it's not as a propaganda thing or as a satire. It's not openly signposting itself as being a satire. That it's very much more subtle in that way. You watch it like RoboCop, again, another Verhoeven film, and there's a fascist overtones to that. You're just you are seduced by the whole idea, and it's only if you think about it you realize, hang on, this is totally ridiculous, or this is totally wrong. I would hate to live in this society.
Yeah.
So that is done in
it's
a
like
more
most of
way.
these people are horrible.
Yeah. The whole situation is horrible.
Is horrible, yeah. I mean, you look at it on just a surface level, it would feel very much like a rah, the glory of war, and like, but it's really not that at all.
Yeah,
it's a pretty great movie.
Yeah.
That reminds me of Judge and how basically you have a super fascist regime and the rule of law is completely defined because you have a single person being judge, jury, executioner, and there is no appeal or anything like that. So you have that.
Yeah, Judge Dredd sort of thing. Yeah, that's again, and that's the Judge Dredd thing isn't even a satire. That's just
straight up.
Yeah, it's weird the point of view that has. You're not meant to look at that and think, oh, this is bad or this is good. It's just, I don't know. I just don't know what's going on there. I never have. That's
but it does tell you, like, because of course you always see Judge Dredd suppressing criminals that are very openly, very, very extreme criminals. So you will go, yeah, do it and stuff. But imagine this guy going to suppress, for example, the opposing party.
Yeah.
Or whatever thing. And or some other crime that isn't as extreme and concrete. How about someone that is the fall guy for a corruption case and he has no chance to prove his case that he's not the guy?
Yeah.
But they never do that, do they? It's always...
Of course not. But that's not the point. But and then you can go into a lot of conspiracy theories about that Judge Dredd actually is preaching for or pushing for in terms of propaganda.
Well,
and I actually do like Judge Dredd, by the way. I like it. But it is what it is.
One of the perspectives on 80s action films, the whole genre of 80s action films that really, really blew up, no pun intended, was that they are fascist propaganda. And you don't really see that. When you watch 80s action films, Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever, you think, oh, it's a good ride, and you love seeing the good guy win. But you don't realize that these situations are set up so the good guy is allowed to use this kind of vicious force, and there is no there are no grey areas. The bad guys are bad, and that's how it is. And he's justified in killing. He's justified in using this extreme force to take care of every situation, and that's how the world should be. And that's just how it is in this world that they're portraying, this fantasy. That's how it is, and you don't realize that actually is fascist propaganda.
Yeah, it is. And if you set it in its historical time and start to think about what happened in the 1990s, in the sense of what people are taught to expect and tolerate, you could even say that it was really bad. But that's again going into other territories. I'm thinking that even in, for example, MacGyver, that I personally was, I think, even my first crush or something like that. Anyway, it was, even if it wasn't, it was high up there. I really liked MacGyver in every sense of the word. But it is very much American propaganda. Americans are good. They go in and solve problems everywhere. They are always humanitarians. They are always on the right. Other people always have, like the Americans always have the moral high ground, and of course they go in and butt in basically everywhere because they have the moral high ground. They know what is best for everyone, and so on and so forth. So
right,
and
that is also propaganda.
Yeah, it was, and we should finish up very soon. I'll just say that kind of thing was harmful and did have an effect because, in a very real example, like in the Philippines, that kind of movie was very, very, very popular. Extremely. They have massive popularity in that genre, and that has led directly to their current president, who is the living embodiment of that character. That is their reality now. They basically, Judge Dredding anybody who's involved in the drug trade. It doesn't matter if they've just, someone's been informed on and they never did drug dealing at all, or someone, who happened to sell a drug someday. They can find themselves murdered in the street, and that's justified because drugs are automatically evil, automatically bad, and this is what action heroes do. They solve problems by killing the bad guys, and their president believes that and thinks in those point of views. So in those terms, so yeah, it's that propaganda actually does work and changes people's ways of thinking. So anyway, that's my final. Anyone else got a final point?
No,
fantastic subject though. Fascinating. Yeah. We could do another hour on that for sure.
Oh, totally.
It's really great. Yeah.
Next time we'll have to get into the folklore stuff. We totally missed that out.
Next time, folklore.
Yes, okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for being with us on the Quackcast. And maybe you disagree with us, and that's fine, because we're not didactic.
Yeah. I would never be, I mean, in almost any case, would never be in favor of stopping those voices or suggesting that, like, this shouldn't be allowed to be said or that shouldn't be allowed to be said. But
yeah, because we go for freedom.
Freedom! Exactly. We're fighting for freedom, everybody.
Everything, absolutely everything should be allowed to be said. But also everything should be allowed to have its counter-argument heard as well.
Yes.
That's serial.
Critical
That's
thinking people too, like rather than emotional kind of accepting.
Yes.
Whatever they try to feed you.
Hopefully we'll get some comments on this and people can enlighten us where we went wrong. Okay, all right. This has been Quackcast number 369. Let's hope for another 69 Quackcasts or whatever. Okay. Bye, everyone.
The next round.
Until next time.
Bye.